Hello, this is Simon Brew. I'm the editor of Film Stories magazine, and a very warm welcome to a special episode of the Film Stories podcast. Now, if you're all ready, I'll get it underway.
Here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
Come with me.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
And movies that had stories.
That the story just sucks them in.
This is just the beginning.
Stories. We would be honored if you would join us.
Hello, and a very warm welcome to Film Stories with Simon Brew. I am Simon Brew. As always, there's absolutely everything you need to know about me. The aim of the podcast, though, well, title gives it away. I'm here to talk of the stories of films, and I tend to talk about development stories, marketing stories, release stories, production stories, all the bits and bobs, really, that go to make the films that we know and sometimes love, the films that we know and sometimes love. Now, this particular episode is an extra special one. It's one of those occasional episodes where I bring in a filmmaker to talk about a particular project they've been working on. And I'm delighted in this case to be welcoming director Joseph Kosinski, ostensibly to talk about his latest movie, at the time this podcast is going out, Top Gun: Maverick. He's also got on his directorial CV Tron Legacy, Oblivion and Only the Brave. We touch on one or two of those as well. But primarily this is a chat about the very, very belated sequel to the 1980s much-loved hit Top Gun. Now, that particular movie came out in 1986, was directed by Tony Scott, produced by Jerry Bruckheimer and starred Tom Cruise. But talk of a follow-up to it and a more direct sequel wouldn't begin until about 10, 11 years ago. In fact, the first stories I can find where this was actually becoming a thing went all the way back to 2010, at which stage Jerry Bruckheimer and director Tony Scott were set to be back on board and Tom Cruise was duly interested. Now, the trio had come together in the aftermath of Top Gun to make the ill-fated 1990 blockbuster Days of Thunder. But the idea of going back to Top Gun, well, it was something that was of interest to director Tony Scott at this point. However, the things took a tragic turn when he took his own life in 2002, and the project at that stage was pretty much shelved. Now, what we're going to hear in the chat I have with Joseph Kosinski is when it sort of came back to life, which was in 2017. It was really clear that this movie was actually going to happen. And it was a meeting that took place between Kosinski and Tom Cruise, which Kosinski is going to tell us about. But script work was going on from the early 2010s and from the mid 2010s. And this particular screenplay in the end is credited to Aaron Kruger, Eric Warren Singer, who worked with Kosinski on the film Only the Brave, and Christopher McQuarrie, working from a story by Peter Craig and Justin Marks, with the original characters by Jim Cash and Jack Epps Jr. And so it was quite a lengthy development, and the film, even when it looked like it had been retired, was still bumbling on and bubbling away to some degree. But really, the catalyst was Kosinski's pitch to Cruise. Cruise was duly impressed with that. A script was ordered, and I think the guiding hand of Christopher McQuarrie comes through here as well, that McQuarrie has now worked on, 10, 11 different Tom Cruise movies. He's directed the last two released Mission Impossible films and will direct the next two as well. The cast in the end for this was led by Tom Cruise, stars Miles Teller, Jennifer Connelly, John Hamm, Glenn Powell, Lewis Putnam, Ed Harris and Val Kilmer are all in the ensemble for this. We also, throughout the course of the conversation, touch on the film's editor, Eddie Hamilton. And I should also note, this was a conversation that took place over Zoom. It's not the brilliant Zoom line. At one point, we lost it altogether, but hopefully some nifty editing has covered that up. I probably shouldn't tell you that bit. But there are little beeps and bits and bobs coming from the other side of the call for a change that wasn't down to me, but it was a bit of a busy day in the midst of the Top Gun Maverick junket. So what I'm going to do, I think that's enough setup. I think that's all you need, really. The next thing you're going to hear is a clip from the trailer for Top Gun Maverick. Then we're going to go straight into my conversation with its director, Joseph Kosinski. Here then is that clip.
Captain Pete Maverick Mitchell. Let me be perfectly blunt. You are not my first choice. You are here at the request of Admiral Kosinski, a.k.a. Iceman. He seems to think that you have something left to offer the Navy. What that is, I can't imagine.
With all due respect, sir, I'm not a teacher. Just want to manage expectations.
What the hell? Good morning, aviators. This is your captain speaking.
And we're off.
Here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
We're going into combat on a level no living pilot's ever seen. Not even him.
So that was a clip from Top Gun Maverick, Top Gun : Maverick. I think, is there a colon in it? I think there's a colon in it. I'll get the adjudication on that in a minute. And I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by its director, Joseph Kosinski. How are you, sir? Are you well?
I'm great. I'm doing great. Nice to meet you.
Well, nice to meet you too. Can I ask that killer clickbait question that's going to set the internet alight then? Is there a colon in the film?
I think it depends on how it's displayed. In the logo, no. But in type, yes, I think that would be correct.
In which case we've resolved this. I always wonder what it's like, because I've been following your career since I was working at a site called Den of Geek, and I remember Tron Legacy coming round
Yes.
first time. I mean, it seems such a whirlwind since then. I always wonder, though, what this bit's like. The moment when you're the director of a big blockbuster film, particularly one that's been delayed and waited for so many times, and then that review embargo lifts. All in one go, all these reviews and verdicts on it after such, like, presumably a pent-up period of time. Can you capture what the human bit of that is for you?
Well, now I've made 5 films, so it's changed over my career.
Yeah.
And now I realize that the success for me, what I determined to be a success is if I like the movie, if I had a great time making the film, and if I'm getting the opportunity to make another one, and so that, to me, you need to get a certain amount of personal satisfaction out of what you determine to be a successful or not successful film. You can't base your experience on what other people say about it, because then you're living a life that is kind of in the hands of others, and I don't think that's the way anyone would want to live. That being said,
I was going to say,
yeah. That being said, to have great reviews is a wonderful thing, and I'm thrilled and so proud of everyone that worked on this movie, because we all worked so hard to try to deliver the best film we could, and the bar was set very high. So to hear that people are enjoying it is a great thing.
I'm trying to be very reserved and British and professional and grown up about this, which I'm clearly terrible at. It's just, I mean, I've not seen a response like this to a blockbuster film for a long time, really, certainly outside of superhero land, and there's no shade I'm throwing on those at all. Mm-hmm. But for a film of this ilk, the kind of film that we thought didn't really exist anymore, in truth, I'm just curious how much of that gets to you and how much you have to shut yourself off from it, because I hear completely what you're saying.
Yeah, like I said, it's an interest, timing is everything, I think, or it's a lot of it. And at some point I had a concern that, holding the movie for 2 years, that somehow the film might feel like it missed its window, or, that people wouldn't be interested anymore, after hearing about it for so long and not seeing it. But it's been interesting that the pandemic and the state of the world now in 2022 somehow has made the film feel more relevant now than I think it would have. And that's just that's something that you could never anticipate or control or try to game. And it's great that people are really appreciating the idea of a classic film that feels like a summer movie. And they're excited to see it on the big screen, because that's exactly what we made it for. We made it to be seen on the biggest screen possible, with great sound and with a full auditorium of people. And
but you've always been big screen, though. Sorry, yeah. I was going to say, you've always been big. I mean, I sat and watched Only the Brave on a big screen. You didn't make that for a phone.
No, I love making movies that look great and have the scale and the scope and transport you. But this one particularly would have been really sad to release, on your phone. That's not what it was meant for. And so to finally be at the point where people are excited to go back to the movies and to have us be coming out, now it just feels like it's the right time, and I can't wait for people to see it.
So a colleague of mine came to visit you on the post-production of Tron Legacy, and he described this scene to me of how you were sat against this constant noise, this whir of service in the background at Digital Domain, with what was being assembled around you. The complexity of it was just staggering. And he described you, and you were in your mid-30s then, I believe, and he described you as cool as aircon at that point. That I appreciated it was a press day and it's a little bit artificial, but someone who, after 2.5 years, I think you've been into the process at that point, just had some certainty about them. Is that a fair reflection, that once you get so deep into a project, you've kind of grounded, or is that constant nagging insecurity still there?
No, I mean, I think I've been lucky in that I always had a very kind of firm and I guess I'm a very stubborn and determined person, in that I have an idea of what it is I'm trying to make, and I'm just 100% focused on pushing towards that goal, no matter what. And that's, I think, a requirement for the job, is to be providing that North Star for the thousands of people that are working on a movie, so that you're all pushing in the same direction. And you just got to hold on to that, that vision, that idea, whatever it is that compelled you to take the journey from the beginning. Just keep your eye on the ball, don't get shaken, don't get pushed off. There's going to be forces and voices and noise, like you said, particularly on the big films, but just stay focused. And if you can hang on till the end, you're going to get there,
Does it feel a little bit like that, hanging on, when you get to the back end of one of these big ones?
For sure. No, because you've got to go through audience testing and studio notes, and, everyone's got an opinion about it should be this way or that way. And that's just the nature of filmmaking. I'm not an artist sitting in a studio with a paintbrush, just making my own little thing. It's a massive, it's a process that requires thousands of people to complete it. So you just got to believe in that core idea, that feeling, that tone, that image that you can't shake, and just constantly being pushing towards it.
Because you don't take low pressure projects on. I think most of us can notice that from the outside. Even your, like, inverted commas, low budget film, you're having to accurately reflect the lives of real life people, which I'd imagine the pressure of that is 3 times anything else that you face.
Yes.
But the thing that also my colleague said at the time was he's a storyteller. He came back and said he's a storyteller. He's not a computer guy in the middle of a load of servers. It's always the story at the heart of it. And I wonder if you can talk to that a little bit, because like we look at something like Oblivion. I remember the response to that was there's a lot of gloss there, but there was a lot of story in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, think I always had, as a kid, I always had a big imagination.
Yeah.
And, I think sometimes the visual nature of the film, sometimes I think distracts people a little bit from the story I'm trying to tell. And, I think every film I'm learning more and more how to make sure that, that the story is always being told, and that is honestly the thing that really gets me excited about each of these projects. It is always the story first. Yeah, that's why we go to movies. Stories. It's the story that makes you remember things more than an image, or a story-driven image is the ultimate combination for cinema, right? And
Yeah, absolutely. And as a moviegoer, I guess you see too, that's the bit that's often neglected quite a lot. And one of the things that really comes through on Top Gun Maverick for me, and I'll drop my cards now. I absolutely bloody love the film.
Oh,
I
great.
mean, I
That's
just
great
thought
to
it was
hear.
sensational. But the thing that I wrote in my write-up of it, and I've not written this about a film for a long time, is it had something of James Cameron's Aliens about it, in that it's one of the few times I've walked out of a blockbuster movie and could remember the name of more than 5 characters. In it.
Great.
And
the call signs helps, right?
Yeah, it helps, but I've watched lots of films with call signs and nicknames and stuff like that. And I'm just curious what state this was in when you got to it, because I've been writing about Top Gun 2 for ages. And with all due respect, I didn't see this coming. I didn't know this was where you were going. I didn't know this was, because I don't watch trailers or anything. I go into these things pretty cold. And so I'm curious, at the point that you come aboard it, where is the script for this? Where are the characters for this? And what's your imprint on the story?
It was 5 years ago, Jerry Bruckheimer sent me an early draft of the script that was a completely different story, I would say. It did have a couple important elements in it that we did keep. But I went back and watched the first Top Gun as a director who had made 3 films versus the 12-year-old kid that watched it for the first time. And what I noticed was that it is a drama at its heart.
Yeah.
It's a rite of passage story wrapped in this kind of action movie exterior. So, and the thing that really resonated with me was the friendship between Goose and Maverick. That's the thing I think that people remember more than the romance of that film.
Yeah.
So to me, the idea that the central relationship of this film would be between Maverick and Goose's son, a reconciliation set against a mission that would take them both deep into enemy territory, seemed like a very right place to start. And when I pitched that idea to Jerry, he said, you gotta talk to Tom about this. Because what I didn't realize at the time was Tom didn't want to make the movie.
Yeah.
So we flew to Paris. Jerry and I flew to Paris. Tom was shooting Mission Impossible. We got 30 minutes of his time. And I had a half hour to pitch this film. And I started with the Maverick Rooster relationship. I pitched the Dark Star opening, where we find Maverick 36 years later and what he's doing. I pitched the idea of shooting it all in camera, which I knew Tom was a requirement for Tom, but I had an idea of how we would actually be able to do it. And then I pitched him the title, which at that point they were calling Top Gun 2. I said, no, it's Top Gun Maverick. It's a character-driven story. It's a rite of passage of this man, who's given everything to aviation, but is alone, and the journey of him finding a family by the end. And Tom,
go on, sorry.
Tom picked up the phone, called the head of Paramount and said, we're making a sequel to Top Gun. And he greenlit the movie in the meeting. And so we had the fundamentals of the story, and then it was a matter of writing a script. We had to figure out what the mission was and all that stuff. So that began, a 1.5-year process of writing the script before we were ready to shoot.
So you said you went back to the original Top Gun. I wonder if you have a Steven Soderbergh moment sometimes when you're looking at other films, appreciating you had 3 films under your belt. But I always remember the interview Soderbergh did where he said he looks at any film and usually can work out how to make it. He looks at something like Mad Max Fury Road, which has been mentioned in parallel to Top Gun Maverick. And he says, I've got no idea at all how to do it. And that's Soderbergh with however many films of all sorts of scale under his belt. Do you look at Top Gun and there's the bit of you that just goes, yeah, I know exactly how to do it? Or is there just terror in your eyes at the thought, how do I do that?
I was just finishing Only the Brave, and I had just worked with Jennifer Connelly and Miles Teller. And I suppose I was in that kind of paternal relationship. It's a different one in that movie, but there is some similarities, certainly. And for whatever reason, I just had this image of Tom and Miles being the center of this film. I had a picture of Miles with me when I talked to Tom. because I had just done a movie with Miles with blonde hair. I think I photoshopped a mustache on him. And I said, I think he might be the one, So I think I knew tonally what I was reaching for, but no idea how much work it would be to actually get to the point we are today to actually translate it into the screen, But it's good you don't know at the beginning. It's good I didn't know what I was getting into with Tron Legacy. I'd never made a movie before. It's good to go in not knowing, because you might turn around and run for the hills.
The old "never tell me the odds" kind of thing.
Yeah, never tell me the odds. Exactly.
Yeah, never tell me the odds. I figure everyone else is going to ask you about flying and the extraordinary aerial sequences. So I want to bring it just a little bit down to earth and just talk about. I think it's Eddie Hamilton was your editor on this. And one of the things that really struck me is, again, it's a long time since I've seen one movie that commits so much to one single mission, to the point where, and I'm going very spoiler light, at the point we see the pilots tackle the mission, we know it as well as they do. It's been so drilled into us. I'm really fascinated by the edit on this, because they're first of all, it just feels absolutely packed tight. The beats are hitting, but second of all, just in terms of the comprehension of what's going on, it's absolutely clear as day. Can you take me into that process a little bit, what the challenges were, and if there was a more complex version of this?
The mission was designed with the Navy. I asked them the question very early on when the first draft I was doing with Eric Warren Singer, who's an incredible writer. We asked the Navy,
the Brave, yeah.
Yes. We asked them, what is the absolute most terrifying mission you could ever imagine? And they laid out essentially this mission, 4 planes, low-level ingress into enemy territory, defended by SAMs, through a mountainous valley with a high G pole going into a GPS jam target that requires lasing with the buddy laser. It's like they laid it out. And we were like, great, that's the mission. The one thing they added, which we didn't do, was that, and we do it at night, which I said, okay, can't do that. Not interesting to see it at night, but we'll do it at dawn, So that was the mission. Then we realized the structure of the film would be, we meet Maverick, we bring him back to Top Gun. We train for the mission. We break the mission into 3 pieces. We train for each piece. None of the pieces are working. Maverick puts all the pieces together, proves it can be done. They go, they execute the mission, and then everything goes wrong. That was the structure of the film. The secret weapon of this movie is Eddie Hamilton, as you pointed out, having made 2 Mission Impossibles, I think. Yes. He had edited 2 Mission Impossibles before making this movie. So his precision and understanding of action and storytelling is absolutely key to making that all work. And Chris McQuarrie, who's made 12 movies with Tom and probably written 4 or 5 Mission Impossibles. I think they're on Mission 8 now. Was the one who hammered in this idea of explaining to the audience exactly what the mission is, to the point where they know it, like you said, as well as the characters, so that by the time you get to the 3rd act, you can just enjoy it. And my first approach to that initial mission brief was much more like grounded in reality. Grainy satellite photos and, much more what the Navy would actually have. And Chris convinced me correctly that, no, this is the time to do the 3D fly through and make it absolutely clear exactly what it is they need to do, so that they don't have to think about it in the 3rd act. So yeah, it's like I got the dream team on this movie in all departments, and benefit from Tom's 40 years and Jerry Bruckheimer's 50 years of experience and the 100 movies they've made collectively to put this together in the right way.
So I don't want to. I don't want this to be a lockdown question per se, because Lord knows I think we're all done with those. My only question there is: was there any temptation to tinker in that prolonged period while it was presumably finished and locked? Because I remember this being asked of the Bond team as well. That when you're sat on something for so long that you know is done, was there any point where you wanted to go back in?
No, we really believed in the movie. We were all really happy with it. And we all went off and shot other things, which is probably a good thing. Yeah. So, that's probably the most important thing, is that we were all very busy trying to stay busy through the pandemic and shoot other projects. So we didn't tinker with it. We waited for theaters to open. And we, by the way, we kept on putting, we thought we were going to be out Christmas 2020, then
I remember,
then summer 2021, then November 2021. So we didn't know how long it was going to be. It was just constantly rolling thing, which was obviously a little torturous, but now we're here. So
yes, how many trailers can you cut for one film?
I know. That's brutal.
And so, I mean, I'm coming to the end of my time. So, I mean, obviously, I need to find out if you're now going to do Hot Shots 3 for us. Now you've done Top Gun 2. If we're going back into Days of Thunder.
I thought you were going to ask if I was going to do Risky Business Part 2.
No, no, I'm more interested in Days of Thunder Trickle. I think would be the if we're following the formula.
Trust me, I've tried. I've tried many times.
But if I can ask one last question of you, you told a lovely story once of when you were making Tron Legacy, of how David Fincher helped you out, that he took you into the post-production of his Benjamin Button film and showed you some of the work that was being done there and how that could help with your film as well. I just wonder, could you tell me what the impact of a filmmaker like that talking to you when you're on your first film is? And also, are you at the point yet where directors are coming to you for similar levels of advice?
Well, David Fincher, beyond that, showing me stuff on Benjamin Button, which was great. I mean, David was the one who really gave me my first break in Hollywood, which was, it was 2006. I had been pitching on commercials for 15 months. I probably pitched on 30 commercials and had gotten nothing. No one wanted to take a chance on me doing a commercial for them. And it was really tough time for me, just because I was failing over and over and over and over again. And David Fincher had gotten a commercial, an opportunity to shoot a commercial for a new video game called Gears of War that came out then. And right at that time, his movie Zodiac was greenlit, and he was unable to do the commercial. And he called the agency up and said, why don't you let Joe take a crack at it? I got his back if he fails spectacularly, but you should let him take a swing at it. And they did. And that commercial was my first kind of nationwide commercial, which led to a Halo commercial, which led to another Halo commercial. And that was kind of the thing. All of a sudden I had a reel that I could show to Disney, and that convinced them to let me do the teaser for Tron Legacy. So David, believed in me before I had done anything, which is huge. And I will be eternally grateful for that. And I still do. In fact, I showed him Spiderhead just a few months ago to get his thoughts. And it's really important, because without those breaks, or someone believing in you, or someone vouching for you, it's really hard to kind of get started.
Well, I think the reverse is about to be true once Top Gun Maverick goes out into the world. I genuinely think it's an extraordinary achievement, and I congratulate you and your team on it. Joseph Kosinski, thank you so much for sparing the time. And that brings to an end my conversation with Joseph Kosinski for Top Gun Maverick. Now, little bits of necessary administration. Top Gun Maverick, at the point this podcast is released, is playing in cinemas, I think around the world, actually. It's certainly out in the UK. I got to see the film on an IMAX screen. I genuinely thought it was something quite special. And if you are going to seek the film out, I would just suggest the biggest possible screen you can find. I mean, there's a real effort that's been made with the film to make it a big cinema movie, and I just think it's a great way to see it. It's just on a massive IMAX screen. IMAX hasn't paid me for this or anything. I just think it's a really quite wonderful way to watch one of the most fun blockbusters I've seen in an awful long time. Which brings me to the end then of this special episode of Film Stories. I'm not going to wax lyrical over Top Gun Maverick. I've written a review of it. You can find it on our website, filmstories.co.uk. You can find more from me on Twitter at Simon Brew, more from the entire Film Stories project at Film Stories Pod. I've just told you the website. If you go to store.filmstories.co.uk, that's where you can buy all of our magazines. There are over 40 issues of them now. Our Sneakers Blu-ray, for those of you in the UK, where we've put together extra features, exclusive extra features as well. We're at facebook.com/filmstoriesonline, youtube.com/filmstories. And if you like this podcast, you can support it over at patreon.com/simonbrew. But I think you've probably had enough of me for now, so I'm going to leave you all in peace. I thank you as always for your ears, and I thank you for your time. I'll be back soon with your regular episode of Film Stories. You all take care. Bye-bye.